In this video we're going to tie a fly called the Nitro Caddis Pupa. First thing I'm going to start with is a Tiemco 2499 SPBL hook and a black bead to match, and then some Veevus 8/0 brown thread. First material we're going to work with here is some olive pearl core braid. I'm just going to take my braid there and just kind of melt a little tip into it, just kind of slowly melting it, and then I quickly hit it with my finger and kind of roll it. That'll roll it into a nice little tapered end there. Then I'm going to take that little body, and I want it to be about the length of the shank of the hook, not including the bead, so just the length of the hook there. Then I'm going to tie in a little kind of butt at the back end of the fly. Now I've wrapped my thread there about the length of the bead. That's going to be kind of my working area for this fly. Got to be careful not to tie too far down the hook shank with this fly. So I'm just going to take this little pearl core braid and just tie in a little butt there. You want it to hang off just the back of the hook. And I lift the pearl core braid forward and I wrap down a few tight wraps in front of it, and then again right on top of it. And then you can trim out the pearl core braid. And you can kind of tidy up the front of the hook. Now the first material that we're going to tie in are going to be the wing pads. I'm just going to take some brown Medallion sheeting here and trim a little thin strip away. I'm going to make wing pads just by kind of cutting a little triangle and trimming the tip. I have a mostly rounded wing pad. Doesn't have to be perfect. Once you tie it in, it'll all kind of crumple together. And I'm going to tie these in so that they just kind of barely come back and touch the bend of the hook. Just like that. You do this on each side. Of the hook here. There we are. Now we're ready for the antenna. I'm going to take a Mallard flank feather and peel away 2 of the fibers. Just like that. We'll take our thread here to the wing pads. Now I'm going to tie these in so that they're longer than the body. I like them to be just a little bit longer, about 1/4 inch. And I like them to be semi-separated when I tie them in, so I'll kind of leave a little space in between them. That way you have a nice distinct kind of separation to those 2 fibers. You can trim out the butt ends. Now we're ready for the legs. For that I'm going to use some brown soft hackle feathers here. I like to use India henback, but any brown soft hackle feather will do. You're looking for that nice kind of rounded tip there. I'm going to trim a notch right out of that nice rounded tip. Kind of the opposite of what you do when you're wrapping with them. Then I'm going to pull back some of the fluff, just kind of exposing a dozen or so fibers, just like that. Now I'm going to take that little notch, I'm just going to slide it right in between each side of the fly. And I'm going to just pinch them into place nice and tight and do a nice loose wrap of thread. If you don't like the way it looks, you can undo it and try it again. I'm actually going to take a little bit of dubbing here just to help with the separation of the legs. So I'm going to take some olive brown ice dubbing. I'm just going to add enough to kind of just put a little bump at the back of the head here. Just a little bump is all I'm looking for. Oh, and it's not sitting where I want it to sit. There we go. Now let's try it. This will help add some separation to our legs. Go. And if they're a little long, you can just give it a little tug, and that'll help get it to sit where you want it to sit. Then you can lay down another tighter wrap to really lock them in place. And then you're going to trim those little legs out of there. Little butt ends to our legs. Then I'll just kind of cover those up with a couple more wraps of thread. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to lay down a little more dubbing to finish off the fly. So I'm going to take more of that olive brown ice dub. Be really careful that you don't overdo it. I just put enough on here for a couple turns of thread, and I like to dub it really tight, so you can use a little bit of dubbing wax to really get it on the thread nice and tight. And I'm just going to take that dubbing and just lay down a couple turns right there behind the bead. And you can whip finish. And that is a Nitro Caddis Pupa. Very effective little caddis pattern. Can also be tied in a brown or like an orangey kind of color. The green is my favorite, but the browny kind of orange color works great as well. That is the Nitro Caddis Pupa.